When was the last time the entire NBA, coaches, GMs, Hall of Famers, former MVPs, looked at a rookie and genuinely thought, "We have never seen anything like this before"? Not Shaq, not LeBron, not Giannis. Victor Wembanyama is something completely different. And if you're still treating him like another hyped prospect, you're already behind on what's happening to the league right now. Because this isn't normal. A player built like this is not supposed to exist. 7'4", over 250 pounds, nearly an 8-foot wingspan. Those measurements alone sound fake, but usually players that size move like trucks. They're slow getting up the floor. They struggle defending smaller players. They live in the paint because that's the only place they can survive. Wemby broke every single one of those rules immediately. He runs the floor like a wing, handles the ball like a guard, shoots off the dribble, takes step-back threes, blocks shots without even jumping sometimes, and somehow he still moves with balance and control that players half his size don't have. That's why NBA players keep sounding shocked every time they talk about him. LeBron James watched him before he even played an official NBA game and called him an alien. Kevin Durant said the league has never seen a talent like this before. Veterans who spent 20 years guarding the greatest players in basketball history look at this guy and almost sound uncomfortable talking about him because they understand what the rest of the world is slowly starting to realize. The NBA may already belong to Victor Wembanyama, and the scary part is that this version of him is probably the worst version we'll ever see. Because even as a rookie, the numbers were insane. Over 21 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3.6 blocks per game. Think about that for a second. Most players who lead the NBA in blocks finish around 2.5. Wemby was nearly a full block above everyone else while still learning how to play in the league as a rookie. And this wasn't empty stat padding either. You could literally watch opposing offenses change the second he stepped onto the floor. Guards stopped driving into the paint. Players passed out of open layups because they were scared he'd recover and block the shot anyway. That's defensive impact you normally only see from all-time legends. But then you remember something even more ridiculous. He can shoot. Over 35% from three at 7'4" is not supposed to be possible. A player that tall should not be able to pull defenders out to the perimeter and then blow past them off the dribble. Defenses genuinely don't know how to guard him yet, because there has never been a player with this combination of length, mobility, touch, and skill. And that's why so many people are struggling to compare him to former stars, because he doesn't really fit into any category we've seen before. Shaq was dominant physically, but teams could foul him and force free throws. Giannis became unstoppable attacking the rim, but defenses used to dare him to shoot. Kareem was unstoppable in the post, but he played in a traditional center role. Even Kevin Durant, probably the closest comparison stylistically, never had Wemby's size or defensive reach. Victor is basically combining pieces of multiple all-time great players into one body that looks like it was created in a lab. And he's only 20 years old. That's the detail people keep forgetting. Most NBA superstars at 20 are still trying to figure out the speed of the game. Most big men don't fully develop until their mid to late 20s. Players usually need years before they understand NBA defenses, spacing, timing, conditioning, physicality, and how to dominate consistently. Wembanyama is already impacting games on both ends at an elite level before his body has even fully matured. He's still adding muscle, still improving his stamina, still expanding his offensive bag, still learning how to read double teams and exploit defenses. This is not his final form. This is the tutorial version. And that should terrify the rest of the NBA, because if he stays healthy, there's a real possibility we're watching the beginning of the next basketball dynasty, especially because of where he landed. The Spurs are probably the perfect organization for someone like him. 5 championships, one of the greatest development systems in sports. A franchise that built a dynasty around Tim Duncan by being patient, disciplined, and smarter than everybody else. They're not rushing Wemby. They're not forcing him to carry bad teams alone just to chase headlines. They're building carefully around him, piece by piece. The same way great organizations always do, and everyone around the league knows it. That's why executives, analysts, and former players keep talking about San Antonio like they're a sleeping giant again. Because once the Spurs finally put the right roster around Wembanyama, the balance of power in the NBA could completely shift. And honestly, the craziest part about all of this is that nobody truly knows what his ceiling is yet. Usually when you scout a player, even an all-time prospect, you can picture the final version. With Wemby, nobody knows. There are moments where he looks like a future MVP. Moments where he looks like the best defensive player in basketball. Moments where he moves like a guard trapped inside a giant's body. And every few weeks he does something on a court that makes even NBA veterans stop and stare. That's when you realize this conversation is bigger than stats, bigger than highlights, bigger than hype. We might be witnessing the beginning of one of those rare players who changes basketball forever. The NBA has always had monsters: Shaq, Hakeem, Duncan, KG, Giannis, LeBron. But every generation gets one player that redefines what people think is physically possible in the sport. Victor Wembanyama looks like that player for this generation. The Wemby era has officially started, and the league might not be ready for what's coming next. So the real question is this: does Victor Wembanyama win a championship before he turns 25?
Zealous puts one down. Spurs by one early. Wembanyama and Vucevic, tough matchup, and Wembanyama makes a pay. Looking to push up to Fox. Shovel pass Barnes inside Wemby, hangs around and gets it to go. Using his momentum.
I mean, he catches this thing at the top of the key, juggles it around, beautiful control, excellent touch off the glass.
Spurs, one of the better mid-range jump shooting teams in the league, 12th in mid-range percentage. Who's zealous? Blocked by Wembanyama. 95 straight games with a rejection. 95.
And he's got a smaller De'Aaron Fox on him. He's able to get away from those three guys going down the court at all times.
Harper did not make the trip to Chicago. The Spurs had to stay back. Oh, Wembanyama! Oh my goodness!
Blocked it with his elbow. He didn't treat too kindly there.
Comes back down the other end and hits a three. Oohs and ahs here in Chi-Town. Defense to offense. He always does this.
Yeah, he does that. Gets a big